My mom joked I was proof birth control wasn't perfect, so I walked away. 6 years later, broke parents begged me for help, unaware I owned their house. 6 years of stored-up emotions had that effect. I was always aware that I was not the best-behaved member of my family. My brother Hugo was the intended one with outstanding grades and a varsity jacket, the entire package. I was, according to my mother's dinner party jokes, what happens when you trust cheap pharmacy brand condoms. It's hilarious, right? She'd been making that joke since I was about 8. Growing up I assumed it was common for your mother to use you as the punchline. But you adapt. I learned the skill to smile through the barbs, like an emotional callus. When people asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said a tax write-off, because that's what my father called me after 3 beers. People believed I was a witty kid. Nah, I was only repeating household material. The night things changed was my mother's birthday meal, not the family supper. It was only the 4 of us at a mid-tier restaurant, and Dad moaned about the prices while ordering his 4th scotch. The main incident occurred 2 days later, when my mother invited her work colleagues around. These were not just any. My mother had been anxiously trying to join this country club crowd for years. Our house wasn't elegant, but Mom went Pinterest crazy for this supper. New placemats, candles, and the good tableware that would typically accumulate dust. Dad was ordered to wear his one acceptable button-up and, for the love of God, not drink more than 5. Hugo received the be impressive talk. I received nothing. That should have been my first indication, not even a please don't embarrass me. The night began with me playing server so Robert could be useful for once. I passed around appetizers while Mom told us about Hugo's baseball scholarship prospects. Dad managed to hold it together for the first hour, nursing his beverages and nodding at acceptable intervals. I was invisible, which was the best-case scenario in these scenarios. Then someone inquired about family planning, or something. Some lady with one of those I want to speak with the manager haircuts mentioned how costly kids are these days. That's when it occurred. My mother, 4 glasses of white wine deep, gave me this expression I knew all too well. The, "I've got a real zinger" expression. She pointed directly at me as I gathered empty cups. Birth control is only 99% effective. She paused for emphasis. He's the 1%. Everyone chuckled. Even my father, who typically just exists in these situations, broke out a belly laugh like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. I stood there, clutching soiled glasses, as everyone laughed at the fact that I was never intended to exist. Hugo was not laughing. He stared at his plate, as if he wished to disappear. At least one person in that room had the dignity to feel embarrassment. The hardest part was that my mother wasn't done yet. "We already had our perfect kid," she said, indicating to Hugo. "Robert, here's what we call the family mistake." More laughs. Someone, I believe it was my father's supervisor, exclaimed, "Ouch. Bet that's going to leave a mark." As if we were in a bad sitcom. I did not chuck the glasses. I did not yell. I simply placed them carefully on the table and headed upstairs to my room. Nobody noticed. The topic had already shifted to someone's vacation in Cancun. I sat on my bed, and something inside me simply clicked off. Like when you shut down a computer that has been running too many apps. The emotive screen turned blue, then black. I knew I was going to leave that night. I emptied my school backpack of textbooks. Who needs trigonometry when you're about to become homeless, right? I packed the essentials. A couple of t-shirts, jeans, underwear, a toothbrush, the $40 birthday money from my grandmother that I'd been saving for a new game, my phone charger, and the emergency Cliff Bars I kept in case my father forgot to go food shopping. Hugo showed up as I was packing. We did not say much. He knew. He probably saw this coming before I did. He gave me $120 from his own savings and his old phone, which still worked but was not tied to the family plan. He said he'd load $20 in prepaid minutes on it the next day. "They won't even notice you're gone until tomorrow afternoon," he told me. Not accusatory, but factual, as if he were giving me the weather report for my trip. I almost broke down, unloaded everything, and climbed into bed to face another day as the family punchline. But then I heard more laughter downstairs and my mother's voice carrying up, something about adolescent attitude issues. Nope. I was finished. I waited until midnight, when the house was silent. Mom and Dad had passed to sleep after drinking their individual bottles of wine and whiskey. Hugo left his desk light on, our old signal from when we were youngsters, while one of us sneaked into the kitchen for goodies. It's all clear. I did not leave a note. What was I about to say? "Thanks for making me feel like a cancerous growth on your perfect family for 16 years? The night was frigid. Late October vibes. I had nowhere to go, yet it felt better than staying. I strolled till I reached the 24-hour McDonald's and used their Wi-Fi to plan my next move. We ended up taking a Greyhound to the next city over. Not too far, but enough. The first week was hard. I slept 2 nights at the bus terminal. I then found a youth refuge. They let me remain for 2 weeks while I got a job washing dishes at a shady cafe that didn't mind that I was underage. All that mattered was that the payment was made in cash. Hugo communicated with us using a disposable email address that we set up. He claimed that when my mother reported me missing, she cried for the cameras. Then she grumbled about how dramatic I was every time the cops departed. Dad got drunk and promised I'd come back when I was hungry enough. I was not going back. Not when hunger made my stomach twist into knots. Not when I stayed at a shelter full of people yelling in their sleep. Not when December arrived and I still didn't have a suitable coat. 2 months in, I met Jack. He caught me asleep in the diner's break room while I was supposed to be doing dishes. Rather than firing me, he inquired as to why I was absent from school. I ended up telling him everything over cold fries after we closed. It turned out that Jack made his own family error. Different details, same taste of garbage. He arranged for me to work on repair projects, initially under the table, then legally once I received my GED at the age of 17. Even allowed me to stay on his couch until I could afford the world's most miserable studio apartment. Those first 2 years were a jumble of 12-hour days, instant ramen, and falling asleep to YouTube tutorials about taxes and credit scores while using free Wi-Fi. No social life since who had time? Just work, save, and survive. Hugo graduated and attended college 3 states away. That was a smart move. We still emailed, but less frequently. He was living his life, but I was starting from scratch. Year 3, I began to feel almost human again. I had my own place with no obvious mold. I started taking community college classes online. Even went on a few Tinder dates that weren't total catastrophes. My parents understood I wasn't coming back around month 5. I filed a missing person report, but it went nowhere because I was working and paying expenses under my legal name. They just weren't working hard enough to uncover the error. Hugo informed me that they had converted my room into a home gym by my 17th birthday. Dad received my baseball card collection, which was actually worth something. Mom informed the neighbors I was attending a special boarding school for troublesome kids. That's when I realized it wasn't just about leaving anymore. This was about becoming someone they'd regret losing. Someone who would make them realize what they'd wasted. I stopped being furious all the time. Anger burns the calories you need for climbing. Instead, I became cold and calculated, viewing money not only as a means of existence, but also as a source of power. Every payment, every A in my online programs, and every new skill I learned added another brick to the wall between me and that dinner table where I stood holding unclean glasses while everyone laughed. It has been 6 years now. I'm 22. I have my own home, my own life, and my own hand-picked group of people that truly care. Hugo is the only person who knows where I am. And he was sworn to secrecy, at least until last week, when he called to warn me that our parents are hunting for something. The Bank of Karma is finally calling in their debt. And me? They had no idea I'd be the collections agent. The interest on emotional debt compounded daily. Update. First and foremost, holy shit. I didn't anticipate the first portion to blow up like that. RIP, inbox. Thank you for all of the prizes and confirming that I'm not the weird one in this narrative. For anyone wondering if this is real, the answer is unfortunately yes. Some details change for obvious reasons, but the main story remains my life. I wish it wasn't. Alright, I'll pick up where I left off. The first 2 years after leaving were primarily survival mode. Working extra shifts, eating cheap ramen, and sleeping on a mattress I found near the dumpster. Don't be judgmental. I thoroughly cleaned it with Lysol. I'd check my email at the public library, and Hugo would give me an update on the home situation. Mom and Dad apparently searched for me for 3 weeks. And by looking, I mean Mom posted a couple of dramatic Facebook updates with my school photo, eliciting her daily dose of compassion replies. Dad called 2 of my schoolmates. This was the extent of their hunt for their missing child. Hugo texted me a screenshot of my mother's Facebook post proclaiming that they had renovated my bedroom into her dream home gym, complete with a Peloton imitation and those decorative weights that no one ever uses. Caption, making lemonade from life's lemons. Blessed chocker fit mom. That post had more engagement than the ones bemoaning my absence. Let that sink in. By year 3, I had saved enough for community college classes. Not the fancy in-person sort, but the inexpensive online ones you do after a long day at work. My back suffered from hunching over a laptop on my kitchen counter, which is also a door between two milk crates. But the ache felt different. Pain has a purpose. I studied business and finance. Not because I was interested in spreadsheets, but because I was learning that money is just math, and math doesn't care whether you're desired or not. That's when I met Clara through an online study group. She contacted me privately after I adjusted her Excel formula for a collaborative project. We began video chatting about tasks, and then moved on to other topics. She was as brilliant as heck, studying for her paralegal certification while working at a law firm. The first time we met in person was at this dismal coffee shop halfway between our apartments. I was anxious as hell, wearing my one decent shirt, which still had a small pasta sauce stain that I had tried to disguise with a pen. She arrived with her hair in a sloppy bun, spectacles, and a smile that made me forget about being the family mistake for the entire 3 hours. I told her everything that night. I expected her to run. Instead, she received a colder expression rather than one of pity. She told me about her own poisonous mother, who used her as an emotional punching bag. We were the same type of destruction, just in various flavors. Clara altered my outlook. I saw survival, but she saw opportunity. While we ate takeaway on my floor, she'd point to property listings and say things like, "That building's value is all wrong based on the neighborhood growth pattern." Hugo, on the other hand, kept me up to date on the home front. Dad's drinking had worsened when he was laid off. Mom's social advancement came to an end when her affluent friends learned she couldn't afford to keep up. Their credit card debt was building up. They had refinanced the home twice. Hugo graduated and relocated to pursue a career. Smart youngster. He was the only person who knew what city I lived in, but not my precise address. We had an emergency system. If he ever texted "blue waffle," an old nasty internet joke between us, it indicated our parents knew where I was. Year 4 was when I began to make actual improvement. I got promoted twice at work. I moved to an apartment where my neighbors did not yell at 3 a.m. I started developing credit with a secured card. Small successes felt huge. I developed an obsession with personal finance subreddits and YouTube channels. We learned about investment accounts, compound interest, and credit development. Every dime I saved seemed like another brick in the wall that kept me from ever needing my parents again. Clara moved in with me at the beginning of year 5. Our house wasn't extravagant, just a one-bedroom with working appliances and a shower that didn't unexpectedly turn cold. But it was ours. We'd sit on our second-hand couch, eating cheap stir-fry, and plan our money the way some couples plan weddings. Hugo set off the first explosive. He called instead of texting, which immediately triggered alarms. Dad had lost the house. Not immediately. They were in pre-foreclosure, but the bank was approaching. Years of refinancing, late payments, and Dad's entrepreneurial aspirations had finally caught up with them. They had 90 days before eviction, and then they remembered they had another son. Mom started sharing old baby photos of me on Facebook. "Missing my baby boy every day. Please share to help us find Robert. Ters missingson, tracker come home." These are the same photos she couldn't be bothered to upload when I went lost. The remarks were pure gold. "I thought he was at boarding school. Didn't you say he joined the military?" My personal favorite is, "Isn't that the room you turned into your gym?" Dad supposedly joined certain Facebook groups for parents of estranged children. He began portraying himself as a distraught parent, desperate to reconnect. Hugo claimed to have been sober for around 3 weeks before going back into drinking. I saw all of this from afar, following Hugo's posts and spying on their social media accounts. Something chilly was developing within me, not just fury, but something more deliberate. Clara noticed. We'd be eating supper and she'd notice me staring at nothing, running numbers through my head. She didn't try to talk me out of my plans. Instead, she helped improve it. I'd been saving and investing actively, living below my means and developing a portfolio. Not much money, but enough to make some moves. Clara used her paralegal experience to help me comprehend the legal aspects. That's when we devised the plan. I called the bank that handled my parents' mortgage, assumed a false name, formed an LLC, indicated that I was interested in purchasing distressed properties in that area, and made a bid on their specific loan. Banks don't care who buys their debt as long as they are paid. After 3 weeks and a mountain of paperwork, I owned my parents' mortgage. They hadn't realized it, but they suddenly owed me money for the roof over their heads. I did not foreclose immediately. I wanted to wait until they found me and begged for help, unaware that I held their financial future in my hands. Clara labeled it poetic justice. I termed it balancing the ledger. Meanwhile, Mom's desperate social media crusade to find me gained traction. Some local Facebook groups in their area shared her posts. People enjoy hearing a nice family reunion story, especially when they don't know the reality. The mistake occurred 6 months ago. Hugo was visiting us for the weekend. He shared an Instagram story of us at a local restaurant with a distinctive painting in the background that screamed our city. He removed it after 10 minutes, but Mother had already seen it. The texts began pouring in. Hugo gave me his phone, which contained 27 unread texts from Mom. All variations of, "Is that Robert?" and "Where are you?" Hugo sent the blue waffle emergency SMS that night. We laughed it off. What were the possibilities that they'd discover me in a metropolis of 2 million people based on a single mural? When you're desperate, it appears to be quite effective. Hugo called 2 weeks ago to say that Mom had joined every Facebook group in our city. I posted my high school photo everywhere, with the caption, "Looking for my son," and some sob story about how we were cruelly separated. Then, last week, my neighbor across the hall remarked that someone had been inquiring about me. They showed me a screenshot. My mother had somehow discovered our apartment complex's community page and was messaging residents. I changed our locks that day. Part of me wanted to run away and start over somewhere else, but Clara reminded me that I now own their house. I had all the cards. Perhaps it was time to play them. 3 days ago it occurred. I was working from home when the buzzer sounded. I checked the security camera footage on my phone. Thank God for affordable smart home technology. There they were. Mom and Dad were there at my door, looking much older and desperate than I remembered. Dad had lost weight. Mom had acquired it. Both appeared to have been awake for days. Dad shifted from foot to foot, as if he needed a drink. Mom clutched her purse as if it held her last bit of dignity. I didn't respond. I watched them press the buzzer 3 more times. They eventually left a handwritten message imploring me to contact them for an urgent family situation. Hugo called that night to confirm what I already knew. They were coming to discuss the house. They needed money. They needed their heir to help them out. I spent the next 2 days preparing with Clara, gathering documents and practicing what I'd say, how I'd be cool, and how I wouldn't give them the joy of seeing the hurt child they'd abandoned. Yesterday morning, the buzzer sounded again. The camera shows the same anxious faces. This time, I woke them up. 6 years of silence were about to break, and they had no idea what awaited them outside my door. They chuckled at the mistake because he now owned their home. And memories are not the only debts that accrue interest. Final update. My hands shook as I buzzed them up. Not from terror, but rather from consuming 3 energy drinks on an empty stomach. That strange electric sensation where your body can't tell whether it's excited or suffering a panic attack. I'd been planning this moment in my imagination for years, rehearsing what I'd say and practicing my facial expressions in the bathroom mirror like a maniac. But when the knock came, all of those practiced speeches evaporated. Clara clasped my hand before entering our bedroom. We'd agreed that she'd stay out of sight initially. The first round was just me and them. Opening that door seemed weird. Like those dreams where you're back in high school in your underwear, but I was fully clothed, and they were the exposed ones. Mom seemed tiny. Her hair was box-dyed, not salon perfect. The luxury purse was gone, replaced by something from a bargain store. Dad had reached the age of 15 and 6. The alcohol bloat had vanished, but so did everything else. His face appeared caved inward, with skin hanging where the puffiness used to be. The quiet lasted 10 awkward seconds before Mom made a strange coughing sound and attempted to hug me. I stepped back. The rejection struck her like a physical blow. Dad merely stared, his gaze darting throughout our apartment, taking in the nice furniture and smart TV, proof that his mistake wasn't living in dirt. Mom began crying instantly, which was exactly what I expected. Emotional manipulation was her first language. Dad sought to maintain decorum by asking if they may come in to discuss. I let them pass without offering them refreshments or chairs. Allow them to stand awkwardly in my living room, like unsolicited door-to-door salespeople. Mom continued repeating she couldn't believe she had discovered me. How she hadn't stopped staring. How many nights had she sobbed herself to sleep, wondering if I was safe. Dad nodded, like a dashboard ornament. Neither mentioned the home gym, which used to be my bedroom. Funny how those details slip your mind when you need them. I finally asked why they were here, not what they wanted to talk about, but why they were still in my home after 6 years. The facade cracked instantly. Mom's faux tears came to an end mid-sob. Dad's shoulders dropped even more. They exchanged a look I recognized from childhood, the one they shared when their credit card was denied at the grocery store. That was when the truth came out. They were losing their house. The bank was foreclosing. They had tried everything. Loan modifications, refinancing, and even a GoFundMe campaign that generated $87 from relatives who were fed up with their financial problems. They needed a place to stay. They needed money. They needed their error. I questioned why they hadn't approached Hugo for assistance. The awkward change began. It turns out they already had. Hugo gave them $3,000 6 months ago, money he couldn't afford as a fresh graduate with student loans. They'd blown through it in weeks and returned for more. Hugo had finally set boundaries, so they had figured out their backup plan: me. The most odd part was watching them go from desperate to calculating in front of me. Mom's gaze continued flitting around, subconsciously pricing my furnishings. Dad asked me casual questions about my job and salary. They were assessing what they could extract from me. I informed them that I needed time to consider. Mom quickly pushed, claiming they only had 2 weeks until eviction. Dad stated that they'd need at least $10,000 to obtain a new home, plus assistance with the deposit. The number grew as they talked. After 20 minutes, I showed them out and promised to call the next day. Mom tried to guilt me for not hugging her goodbye. Dad tried to pretend as if everything was normal, as if they hadn't rendered a 16-year-old homeless and then ignored him for years. The moment they left, I had a mini meltdown in the kitchen. Clara discovered me sitting on the floor, laughing and sobbing at the same moment. Not my proudest moment. She didn't try to remedy things. She simply sat next to me and waited it out. That night we finalized our plan. The following day, I called and invited them to dinner, not at our house, but at a mid-range restaurant where I had rented a private room. They agreed suspiciously swiftly. When they came, they discovered not only me, but Clara, Hugo, who had flown in that morning, and Jack, my genuine family, the individuals who had been there when it counted. Mom's expression when she learned it wasn't a private cash handover was priceless. Dad seemed to want to order a double whiskey, but wasn't sure if I was paying. Before we began, I let everyone take their seats and order refreshments. Then I informed them that I knew about their mortgage predicament. Their expressions changed from confusion to hope. They mistook it for an offer of assistance. Instead, I put a folder on the table. The mortgage records revealed that I, through my LLC, now owned their debt. Their house was technically my property. Mom became white. Dad turned red. Hugo concealed a smile as he gazed down at his water glass. Clara fixed them with the cool, analytical eye of someone examining lab specimens. I calmly and clearly stated that I had options. I could foreclose immediately. I could provide a payment plan that they could not reasonably afford. I may allow them to stay as renters under tight terms. Or, and here's the kicker, I could sign the house over to them free and clear if they met specific criteria. The first requirement was that they openly admit how they had treated me, not just to family, but to their friends, neighbors, and everyone. The same folks who laughed at the 1% joke needed to know what occurred next. Second, they would go to family counseling with me and Hugo. Not to mend our relationship, but so they could hear from a competent witness just how their actions had damaged their children. Third, they would sign a legally enforceable agreement promising never to ask me for financial aid again. Mom began crying for real this time. There's no audience to act for, only genuine shock. Dad looked at the materials as if they were written in ancient Sumerian. Hugo finally stood out, encouraging them to be grateful, that what I was offering was more than fair, given what they'd done, and that he'd seen me develop myself from nothing while they replaced me with exercise equipment. Dinner was awful. Mom alternated between defensive fury and manipulative tears. Dad basically sat astonished, except for one moment when he inquired whether I had done this solely to hurt them. I responded with, "No. I did it to balance the books. You discarded me when I had no value to you. Now you want to treat me like an ATM when you need something. That's not how family works. That's not how anything works." They fled without accepting my terms. I gave them 48 hours to decide. These 2 days were unusual. I felt both powerful and hollow. Clara kept checking on me, offering me tea that I didn't drink and sitting next to me as I gazed blankly. Hugo remained on our couch, serving as a buffer between me and unexpected parental visits. They returned on the morning of the deadline. They appeared defeated. They had agreed on my terms. Not because they realized what they had done wrong, but because they had no choice. The documentation was signed with little drama. I had Clara's co-worker, who is a notary, witness everything. The aftermath has been complex. So far they've maintained their word, most likely because they know I still have copies of everything and can take legal action. Mom issued a lengthy, self-pitying apology on Facebook, which still made her the victim. Dad has called twice, awkward discussions in which he appears to be trying to figure out whether I am still upset. Hugo returned home yesterday. Before departing, he held me tightly and told me how proud he was of me for holding them accountable, something he had never had the confidence to do. Is this vengeance? I suppose, but it seems more like a correction. Imagine finally balancing an equation that has been incorrect for 22 years. Am I happy? Not precisely. Satisfied is a better term. The anger is still there, but it no longer feels like a searing hole in my chest, but rather like a scar that has finally healed. Clara and I were laying in bed last night discussing whether we should get a puppy or save for our own house. Normal couple stuff. She inquired whether I regretted any of it. I thought about it for a long time. I was thinking about the 16-year-old kid with $40 in his rucksack. I reflected on all the evenings I had gone hungry. I used to work double shifts with a fever since there was no safety net. Then I considered who I would become as a result of it. How I had created something from nothing. How I found folks who genuinely valued me. I responded, no, I don't regret it. Not the leaving, not the struggling, not even the revenge. Some mistakes turn out to be the best decisions you ever make.